Howdy everybody. In the last video we threaded our cables through our integrated bars, didn't we? Now we're up to putting those cables through our frame. Now we need to cover a few extra issues, one of them being the headset area. You need to make sure we get the headset area right, because once your cables are in, we don't want to take them out for a long time. Because they're integrated cables, it's very awkward and time consuming. So we've got to get that head area right. So we're going to do that. Now the principles in this video will apply whether you're using mechanical or Di2 gearing. It doesn't matter, the cabling system is very much similar. Getting these wires through your frame to where the appropriate area where they need to go. So no more yakking with the introduction, let's get on with it. Now with the seat post back here, you've got that little rubber seal over there, so water should not get into and down your seat tube. Now with your headset bearings, you also need to make sure that you don't get your water and grease into your bearings, because if you've got integrated cables, which we're talking about, you're not going to want to pull things apart every 6 months or year or even 2 years, because it's such a pain to take those cables apart. So you need to make sure that your headset area is really tight against the moisture as well, good seal. Now if you get down low, with this particular model, you have a look at whatever bike you've got as well. You can see there's a gap between this top headpiece here and the frame. And directly in that gap is your sealed bearing. Now that sealed bearing, just because it's sealed, doesn't mean that you're not going to get moisture inside the bearings, the ball bearings and the racers themselves. So you need to make sure that gap is well tight from moisture. Now this one is way open to moisture, so we're going to have to do something about that. Now one of the easiest ways to seal that gap is to use this. It's a seating washer, and it's a flexible rubber or a silicone washer, and it's very thin. It's around about 1.3 to 1.4 millimeters in diameter. So you lift that up, put that straight on. What you can do is, if it sticks out too much, just mark with a pen wherever you want to, and you can cut it to size. Now I've done it with this one. It's cut to size. I've marked it, and then you also need to mark where your cables go, your integrated cables go through. So you need to cut a bit there. Another way of doing, which I'm going to do with this Yo-Yo R12, is use this. It's a key seal. Now it's a larger rubber washer, and it'll cost you a little bit more than just that plain little washer there. And it fits over the whole headset area. So the bottom lip of the seal goes below the top of the frame head tube where the bearing sits, and with a good hugging seal onto the spaces, and of course allows your cables to go through. Nice. Now it may not look as aerodynamic and it's a bit bulky, but you know what, I reckon it does match the stem quite nicely. But the main thing is, water is not going to get into those bearings. If it tries to get in, it's going to take a long time before it gets in, many years. So before you go putting in, these are the proper handlebars, they're only a makeshift one to show you. Before you go threading all these cables through, make sure water is not going to get into your headset. You don't want to go pulling apart your headset in 6 months or a year's time, having to pull all these cables out, maybe even having to replace one because you butchered one of the ends on your hydraulic barb or the olive on there or something like that, just because you need to replace your top bearing or maybe both your bearings because water has got in there. Now another issue with bearings in your headset is they can creak. Now the bearing sitting in your headset, it should be a good tight fit, but sometimes it can be just that fraction loose, and a little bit of looseness only needs to be a fraction of a millimeter and it will creak. So now I've used over time this, it's a liquid rubber, it's called Disc Brake Quiet. This is by CRC, this one I use, but there's other brands of course. And you put it on the surfaces that come in contact with your frame and with your retaining parts as well. So that will just put a small amount of cushion between those parts and tighten them up, and they won't creak. So before you go assembling everything, I'll show you, we'll put some of that on as well. First step is to clean all the contact surfaces, including the retaining parts and the outside surfaces of your sealed bearings, with isopropyl alcohol. With a very small brush, paint all those contact surfaces with the Disc Brake Quiet liquid. Then let it dry or cure as per instructions on the bottle. Should take about a day and a half, and then it feels like tacky rubber. So here's our tubing, and we'll measure for the rear derailleur how much we need. Just unravel it first. So now I could use the other method of putting in the separate pieces like I did in the other video, or we could use this tubing now. We did the separate pieces before, so we'll try this tubing now. So here's your frame and the cables that need to go through. Now in the head area here, you don't want to put any anti-vibration foam because it'll start to make your steering stiff. With your front brake hose, it goes into a hole in the fork steerer and then into a purposely built channel in the fork blade. So that'll hold the hose firmly so it won't rattle anyhow. So no anti-vibration foam required here. However, your other three outers all go down your down tube of your frame, so you'll need to put anti-vibration foam on each of them. And then for your rear derailleur and your rear brake caliper, you'll probably want to put some anti-vibration foam on them in your rear stays. So we're going to go from about here down to around the bottom bracket. We'll just put a bit more extra. So you find the rear cable, gear cable. It's the longest one. Put the tubing on. So here's the handlebars with all the cables threaded through, and we're ready to put them into the frame. I've also got the anti-vibration soft padding on so that the cables don't rattle in the frame. Right, so first of all we start off with our nice piece here, which we got from the hardware store, which will cover the headset nicely like that. So we're going to put that on, slip that on all the cables. Right, so that's on there. And then the headset pieces themselves. Actually, what you can do is slide them all on at once, put them together, because it's that one first, the small one, then that one, and then the top piece there. So we'll put them together and we'll just slide them on the cables, it's easier. Right, check and double check that you've got these around the right way. For these ones, there's little spikes sticking up one way, so they can only go up in one direction. So just make sure before you put all your cables through, everything is ready and right in the right order and facing the right way, because nothing worse than putting your cables through and going, oh no, I have to take them out again because one piece is wrong. So just make sure. Now, the liquid rubber stuff is set now on both our bearings, top piece, the forks, and in the frame. So it's still tacky to touch, that's okay. It's been drying for well over a day now, so that's ready. Right, so you can just place your bearings in. Remember the right way to go, and one sits that way, and this one sits back up that way. I'll probably just sit in there. The goo will probably hold them in. Make sure the races are nice and free, both the top one and the bottom one. Yep, they're perfect. Now a little bit of help, put the handlebars like that on a bench and put your frame up your head area close to where the cables are. In fact, what you could do is even raise your stand a little bit and then tilt it downwards like that. Right, so it's easy, you get it all close and it's easy to thread your cables through like that, so your handlebars are resting on something, otherwise your handlebars are going to be in mid-air hanging around. Right, so you start with your rear derailleur cable, work from this side and work that way, or if you're on the other side, work that way and back. But I'm just going to start the rear derailleur. So it's obviously the outermost cable, and that's this one. Now if you need to, use your inner cable and go from the back all the way up here and then thread this through. It'll guide it as you go in. Don't really need to with this, but I'll do it just to show you anyway, so we'll put one through. It's in the bottom bracket, now we're just guiding it up here. Right, you can feel it come to a halt. There it is. The head tube area. Now, this is where these long bent nose pliers come in handy. stick them in and straight away there it is, just your cable. Right, so the rear derailleur outer housing. Just be careful, don't get the inner through your frame, you'll lose it. And I'll do that enough. That'll guide it through. And this part here has got to end up in that area there. Too close to the handlebars. Move it while you can, because it's hard to move. It grips once it's in the frame. It's down there now. Again, the dental hooky tool, very handy. Might need to push it from the bottom bracket. There we go, got it. Right, and the same thing. We'll go through the here for the rear hydraulic brake hose. With the cable up there. Head area. Just fall out. Now thread the hydraulic hose onto the inner cable just a little bit. And push it down. Now this hydraulic hose is bent. Wants to go in around, so it might be a little bit more awkward than your gear cable. We'll just start it off. Right. Again, make sure the anti-vibration foam is away from this head area and exactly on the right position before you go burying it inside your tube. It's going to be down near the bottom bracket now. Yep. And here it comes out the frame there. Now the front derailleur cable. Now you won't need a guiding cable, well you probably won't need a guiding inner cable, because when you see it down the bottom bracket, it goes straight, curves around and into an insert. Now for this particular frame, the Yoleo R12, you now need to put in your front derailleur cable hard stopper. It goes under your bottom bracket area. Here's the hole in your bottom bracket shell for the front derailleur cable, so push that cable through. Now as you're feeding them through, you might want to pull the cables through, just bit by bit, each one, and then your handlebars will come up. And those anti-vibration foam should be down in here pretty soon, almost there, which is perfect. So now you might want to bring your stand close to your bench, as your handlebars are now going to be up. So getting the front hydraulic brake cable, put it in on that side, so all those cables in there, because that's where the hole in the fork is, on that side. Just push that all the way through, straight down and out the bottom. There we go. Put that through that hole in the fork steerer. There we go. Got it. Again, if you need to use an inner cable to guide the hose through, then do so, which is what I did here, because it was impinging on the outlet here on the fork just a little bit, so this helped it. I could pull it out and get it through. So that's through now, and I can pull that out. So you get the steerer in, just fits perfectly. Right, make sure it's on the right side. Now push it down and pull it as your steerer goes up. Otherwise you'll never get your steerer up through there. Make sure the respective cable's on the right side, I'll just show you. So you've got your rear derailleur and brake there, and your front derailleur and brake on that side. So get our C piece here, which has got all that goo on it. Slide that on. And the cables go in front of it. And you slide this next piece on. And the next piece. And the next smaller piece. Again, you might want to pull your cables a little bit through just to make sure everything's going in the right place. Just take your time and you'll get it. It'll also take a bit of working to get it on. Right, so the sleeve's on and the head stem, bottom of the head stem fits perfectly on that, and those two little pins, there's one each side, and there's two little holes in the stem and they line up. So that's perfect. But before we do that, I'm going to put some carbon paste, just a little bit on the steerer. Even though there's a sleeve in here, it just helps. And so now this head stem goes on, but don't forget to pull your cable so it helps it go down bit by bit. Make sure the slit in the sheath is lined up. Finally, after going bit by bit, you get there like that, and then to compress it all down properly, of course, is you use your little spacer on top and the top cap, and then that'll pull it all together. And it should be loose, quite good. And for the stem clamp bolts, don't forget to make sure that they've got grease on them. Being brand new, this one has got no grease on it. It's all very well being nice and shiny, but if you go and torque them up and it starts to bite on itself, you'll get a wrong torque reading. So grease your threads, both the bolt and the nut. Right, at this point I'd advise put your wheels on, front and rear. Just snip up the head stem clamp bolts and make sure your handlebars are relatively central to your wheel. There. Right, now what you can do is check if there's any vibration. Oh, that's touching. Beautiful. And of course you really need your front brake so you can put it on to test the movement of your head's set. So we'll find out later, but that's tight. That's nice and tight. And of course it's free. Lovely. Now this head area may look a little bit ugly for you, maybe a bit out of what you normally see, a bit bulky, but you know what? I very much doubt water's going to get in there now. Look at that. Such a nice tight seal. Water's going to come along, it's going to come off like that. And even if it tries to go up, it'll be hard pressed to get in there. Very tight fit, beautiful. And same here. Very tight fit. Well, there we go, all done. Now the headset area is sealed up against moisture and operates beautifully. And all your cables are routed through the frame with the anti-vibration foam, so there'll be no rattling of cables inside your frame. And you've got excess sticking out, rear derailleur, rear caliper, front caliper, and your front derailleur down here, all lots of excess, even up here for your handle when you put your levers on. Excess, always have excess, so that way you cut it off and then at the right length, and you'll be okay. Right, so the next thing is to put the components on, Shimano Ultegra Mechanical, which we'll be doing in the next video. So in the meantime, keep riding. We'll see you soon.